The women's... What the fuck am I saying now? Now I'm all flustered.
Why are you so red, Jordan?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're live for episode 2 of the Subspectrum BJJ podcast. We are live from Principal Johnson's office at Franklin Junior High, the home of Subspectrum's Summer Showdown coming up on August 14th. We're going to be talking a lot more about that event and the confirmed competitors for our cash prize brackets later in the show. But before we get to that, we have to follow up on our giveaway from last week. It's the hashtag JordanJitsuLooksLike. And Derrick, what was it that you decided you were going to give away to the people?
So we are going to be giving our winner a $25 gift card to Phalanx. I'm going to be in contact with the winner, and I'm going to just need the email address, and we'll be able to get it out to you at that point.
All right. But before we reveal the winner, we're going to go over some of our honorable mentions, some of the comments that made us laugh the most or were the best from Derrick's comment section that he put out as a post. The first one comes to us from JSpins22, which I believe is Longboard Joe, correct?
That is Longboard Joe making his second appearance. Two out of two.
He's a podcast regular here. Jordan Jitsu looks like the type of guy that can be overheard at a party saying, "Look into it." And to that I have to say, if by it you mean your beautiful blue eyes, Joe, then you are absolutely right.
He's a married man.
That doesn't matter to me. Second honorable mention comes to Rad Aaron. Pretty straightforward, really. Jordan Jitsu looks like he's got a full day of beach fun planned, followed by an evening of mustache rides. And I'm only mildly offended that you believe that the mustache rides are only reserved for the evenings and don't take place at the beach.
It's also very bold of you to predict him being on a beach with how pale Jordan is.
I would be burnt to shit. I'd turn into a lobster. I might overlay a picture of me in San Diego the last day I was there a couple years ago, falling asleep on the beach, and I literally looked like a lobster at the end of it. Next honorable mention comes to us from Mo Apples, and I have no clue who Mo Apples is.
This is actually somebody I went to high school with.
Oh, okay, perfect. He says he looks like the kind of guy that tells a girl he's allergic to latex. And this is not only... You got something to say?
It's a she.
Oh, well, she. I couldn't see. They're like holding a banana in front of their face or something.
You're good.
Okay. Well, this one's not only hilarious, but accurate because I, in fact, am allergic to latex, which is why I endorse Trojan's Natural Lamb Luxury Condoms. These condoms provide real skin-to-skin intimacy for the monogamous couple. Not only are they latex-free, but they also protect against pregnancy. However, they do not protect against sexually transmitted diseases. So if you're the promiscuous type, like my co-host Derrick Flaig, maybe these condoms aren't for you. But if you're looking to spice up your time between the sheets with your lady or man friend, then Trojan's got you covered. All the way from just the tip to the base.
How dare you? How dare you?
All right.
No free ads, and yet here we are promoting...
Hashtag no free ads.
All the free ads.
Up next, Jet the Train. Another training partner of yours as well at Henzo Gracie Academy, I believe. At Jordan Jitsu looks like an undercover cop asking for drugs at a rave.
Jet, I think you're speaking from experience when you ask this. Like, you were that same type of guy. You're child size, so it would make sense.
See, we got to roast everybody that leaves a comment, right? And that's why we do the YouTube comments, which will be coming up here pretty soon. But that's the end of our honorable mentions, and we lead into the giveaway winner, Derrick.
So, our winner was Alex from Ames, or Peachy Keen on Instagram. The comment was, Jordan looks like the guy who could be 23 or 33 at a party giving out free life advice and also talking about cryptocurrency. The reason I selected this is how accurate it is. Jordan with a mustache looks like he could be either age and would be more than willing to go ahead and give you any life advice about everything he has going on. And then last year, it was even greater when he was going through the cryptocurrency phase and posting about it as well. Not to say that it's negative, but the accuracy behind this is amazing. So because of that, Alex wins a $25 gift card.
Lucky her, right? So how'd you say that you're going to be in contact with her?
I sent her a message already.
Oh, well, perfect. She's our winner, and she already knows it. So
this week's giveaway is going to be 2 tickets to the Summer Showdown. If you would like to elaborate on that a little bit more.
Yep, that'll be a $30 value, 2 tickets to the Summer Showdown on August 14th, $15 a piece. We are raising the admission price from $10 to $15 as we are going into a bigger venue. We're giving away more cash prizes. We're bringing in a producer and a film crew, a photo crew, everything to make sure that we have the highest quality content possible. So you guys will be paying a little bit more at the door, but 2 tickets nonetheless to the Summer Showdown on August 14th as part of this week's giveaway.
And if that wasn't good enough, the winner is also going to get a $25 Amazon gift card given to them. All you have to do is tag someone in this post below or this video and give them a compliment. It could be about their jiu-jitsu game, it could be about anything in general, but you just need to tag them and compliment them. It could be passive-aggressive, like your heel hook defense is getting a little bit better. That would be great. And then on top of that, you need to share this to your story or to your Facebook, and then follow at Derrick.Flaig on Insta, at JordanJitsu on Instagram, and at Subspectrum on Instagram as well. At Subspectrum BJJ, excuse me. And then also on Facebook, you can get 3 more entries into our random drawing by using that platform as well, with all 3 profiles from there.
Awesome.
So this gives you 6 possible entries between Facebook and Instagram, and then next week we'll go ahead and randomly draw a winner. Winner gets the 2 Summer Showdown tickets and then a $25 gift card.
Awesome. So generous we are with those giveaways, which leads into another way that our viewers can get involved with the show, and it's our YouTube comments of the week, right? Last week we had some great submissions for this one. This week I think we've got a couple more pretty great submissions for the YouTube comments of the week. This is the most ridiculous, or maybe a nice comment, or maybe a question from any of the comment sections of any of our videos on YouTube. I check this regularly throughout the day, so I read almost every single comment that goes on any one of those videos on the channel. So Derrick's got his pick this week, and why don't you go ahead and read that for us, Derrick?
Yes, so this comes from the Mikey England versus Austin Baker match in Subspectrum back in the first Absolutes, correct?
Yes, back in 2019.
So
almost 2 years ago.
Almost 2 years to the date, actually.
Yeah.
It
was June 29th.
Yep. So Dan Neer, I will say is his name. He said, for anyone that wants to know what style was more effective in a fist fight, you never want to lay on your back in a real fight or you'll get your face kicked in. So I'm glad that we're not doing a fist fight because we're, again, back to the same theme as last week. We're pulling guard because it's more effective. Now, I do want to know what martial art or fighting style Dan is referring to, though, where you lay on your back for a real fight. Then on top of that, getting it kicked in. Doesn't seem like a legit style, so Dan, if you would like to go ahead and reach out to me, we can talk about this. But again, another shameless plug of butt scooting is perfectly fine, especially in a jiu-jitsu match. Nobody's going to go into a street fight and say, you know what, I'm going to sit down, hold on to your advantage.
Remember that, I think Keenan Cornelius made a little clip
Kit
a few
Dale.
years ago. Oh, was it Kit Dale?
Kit Dale was involved with it, too.
Okay, yeah, they showed butt scooting in the streets, and tearing up your jeans.
And I'm going to be completely honest. If somebody just sat down to butt scoot and started coming towards me and I didn't know what jiu-jitsu was, I'd probably freak out and run the other way.
I'd be terrified. I'd think there was something wrong with them. And
Or
more
they
often
have
than not,
worms.
exactly, there's something wrong with them. All right, so that's Derrick's comment of the week. That leads into my comment comment of the week, which is a little less controversial. It's just a question from the exact same video, titled Division I Wrestler versus BJJ Brown Belt. Gosh, people hate that name.
It's hilarious to see how upset people get about YouTube titles.
What do you want to bet it's all wrestlers that are upset about it?
I would say at least 95% of them are. The other might be like judo or hapkido.
Yeah. But people really hate that. But hey, it draws views. It gets more people to watch the videos. It gets that video out to more eyes, which makes us more money, which allows us to give away more money to the athletes that compete at our events. And that's really what it's all about for me. So I have no problem with that. The comment comes and it tags a timestamp of 2:36 from Green Goose Guava Juice. That's a really cool name. I like that, man.
Is guava juice green?
I don't think so. But a green goose is. I don't know. Yeah, whatever. Why does he fight off the left leg instead of trying to fight the hands? Sorry if it's a stupid quest. I'm assuming he means question. Just a curious white belt. And actually, this isn't a stupid question at all. I've actually read through this comment section, and there's a lot of people asking this question, and a lot of people who I tried to explain to, in word form, what Mikey was trying to do in this situation. So we're going to actually bring up the clip from the match, and we're going to do a quick little breakdown of what exactly it is that is going on in that portion of the match. So here, Austin Baker, you can see, has pretty good spinal alignment. Let's see. I'm going to try to see if I can pause this video. There we go. Right. In this moment, Austin has really good spinal alignment, but he elects to straighten that arm away and almost commit entirely 100% to the choke in this position. And just in a few seconds here, when I roll this clip, you'll see that what Mikey's able to do is he's able to create separation between his left shoulder and Austin's chest. He does that almost unintentionally because he actually reaches down to fight the hook, but by doing that, he also allows himself to get himself back to his base. So the two things I want you to watch are Mikey's left shoulder and Mikey's right knee throughout this clip. So as I go to play it, as soon as Austin commits 100% to the choke, Mikey's able to create that separation between his left shoulder and Austin's chest. So Austin's chest is no longer in alignment with his spine, and it makes it difficult for him to hold on to this back mount position, especially if he's not able to maintain that left hook, which Mikey immediately goes to fight with his left hand. So as Mikey starts peeling that left hook off, you can see Austin struggling to maintain spinal alignment, struggling to be able to finish the choke because he's not actually underneath the chin. He's over the chin, and while you can absolutely finish a choke from there, he knows that if he commits fully beyond the gable grip or the hand-to-hand grip and tries to go to his full rear naked choke grip, he's going to lose the position entirely, and you'll see here in a moment he does that. So Mikey's using that left hand in there to fight that hook, and while he's fighting that left hook, he's able to get his right knee back underneath of him, which allows him to get his base back underneath him. He's able to get the power that comes from his hips underneath of his base underneath of him, and that makes it hard for Austin to continue climbing up and maintaining that chest-to-back connection. So once he sheds the left hook entirely, Austin's pretty much left with nothing here. All he has is a grip around the neck, but he has no connection to the back. He tries to use that left hand to come up and regain that back mount position, but at that point, Mikey's base is just so good, he's able to get himself out of that position and make the stand-up. So we'll watch the clip one more time. Austin and Mikey hand fighting here. Austin starts walking that hand up for the rear naked choke. He goes palm to palm. Mikey starts fighting that left hook to make it tough for Austin to maintain that spinal alignment and that chest to back connection. And eventually, once he completely sheds the hook and his base is underneath of him, Austin has to give up on the position and bail out. So that's my comment of the week this week, and I appreciate the fact that somebody asked a question and that we could answer it for you with a little bit of a breakdown. So hopefully that makes sense. So again, this is the section of the show where you guys have an opportunity to be a part of the Subspectrum BJJ podcast. So leave comments on our YouTube videos. I will read through them throughout the week. Derrick will read through them throughout the week. We'll find our favorites, and we will bring them up on the podcast each week. So Up next, we're going to be recapping BJJ Stars in Brazil, which was this past weekend on Flow Grappling. We're not going to spend too much time talking about this event. There were a lot of really great matches and matchups, but I'm going to be honest, I didn't watch it. So I don't have a whole lot to say, but the main event did end in controversy, and I think that's something that's worth talking about and something that a handful of our viewers on Instagram asked that we speak on. So let's go on to this next portion, and it's Hulk goes to sleep, but wins. And we're going to bring up an image slideshow to kind of give you a view of exactly what happened. Mateus Diniz in the final moments of his match against Hulk Barbosa out of Atos, he ended up with a full rear naked choke, or a one-armed rear naked choke. I think Hulk slammed him, and then while he was on the ground, Mateus Diniz actually finished the rear naked choke. Hulk goes unconscious, but the referee deems that the choke, or the act of Hulk Barbosa going unconscious, was actually after the clock had expired, which meant that Hulk won 2-0 on points, and you see him flexing despite going unconscious at the end of the match.
There's so many things to take away from this, just from that situation itself. One, why the hell is Hulk celebrating being put to sleep? I've never seen that happen. The only thing I've ever seen is people wake up and feel like they're just getting out of bed. Like, why the hell am I waking up in the gym bedroom? But I don't understand why he's so happy about this win when it was something where he essentially lost. That brings up the second point of, how do you address this in a way that is beneficial? Because clearly that match, if it had gone on any amount of time longer, so say that they had stoppage in time and the clock ran a little bit longer, or they stopped it early, or there was malfunctions with the clock. If that match goes 2-3 seconds longer, Hulk loses. And that's what's interesting about that, because you also can't decide when Hulk went to sleep. I just feel bad for Mateus, because he should have won that. And that's one of the things. Now, you will never hear me say this again about maybe on one other subject, but that's one of the things Metamoris did correct, is when they had their matches, they said that if a deep submission is in, the match continues. You don't get saved by the bell. You don't get saved by the clock. And I think that's something that should be implemented more, especially in these large events where you have large amounts of money going on, or there's a lot of there's just a lot on the line. It's just more beneficial. There's a guy named Alan Wrench on Instagram that kind of broke that down, of how it would be more beneficial, or he asked a question behind it. And I agree. I think if somebody has a submission locked in, you shouldn't be saved by the clock. You see that so many different times, where an example is at American Nationals this weekend as well, when John Hansen was facing Austin Baker. Austin had a tight submission on him, but because the time was running down, John didn't just ate the knee bar, essentially, is what he did. So if we had that as a more common practice of letting the clock run, or letting the match run after the time, I think you'd see a more accurate winner. Because first of all, you shouldn't celebrate that victory, and Hulk wasn't the real winner, in my opinion. And to post about it days after is wild to me.
I think you have to address the referee in that position too, because the referee did not get involved at all. He did not, when the clock ran out, he was not there putting his hands on the fighter saying stop. And this is something that you kind of see a lot in the IBJJF referees, the Brazilian referees, is they just do like a weird hand signal. And I'm sorry, I don't know what any of those mean. Maybe I'm the one that's ignorant for that. But I think that the referee does need to get involved a little bit closer. If, those are the rules, then the match does end when time expires, even despite there being a submission locked in tight. He needs to get involved and put both hands on the fighters and say, time is over, or, something that allows Mateus to understand that the match is over, and that despite him choking Hulk unconscious,
if only there was one word you could use to signify something is done, like stop or something.
That'd be pretty useful, but apparently that's not something that is utilized at BJJ Stars. So let's move on to the next section of our podcast, and it's going to be another recap of an event that we talked about last week. pretty extensively. We gave some picks for the event, and that's Submission Underground 24, which took place on Sunday on UFC Fight Pass. They had their 8-man men's absolute tournament to figure out who will be facing Mason Fowler on July 18th, and it was a pretty exciting bracket, I'm not going to lie. You want to go ahead and go through those first round matchups? I think each of us picked Roberto, Mourinho, Bame, and Maximov. Maximov was the one that we were wrong on. I believe it was Weisgrim that beat him in the quarterfinals. All the rest of those picks we were correct on, 3-1. Do you have the exact results up in front of you?
I do. So this is one of the unique submission undergrounds in that there's a lot of finishes across the board, and it ran very quickly. So in the first round, or the quarterfinals, Kyle Bame beat Hinato Tagliari by submission in 35 seconds.
Wow.
So that was very quick, obviously. The only match in the first round to go the distance and into the EBI overtime was the Weisgrim-Maximov, which ended with Weisgrim winning by the right time, essentially, is what. He didn't get a submission, he just didn't get submitted quicker.
Yeah, and that was interesting because you saw Maximov use the armbar instead of the back mount in overtime. And while I do appreciate the fact that people are doing that, as far as if you're trying to actually win, I think it's a pretty difficult thing to do to pick the armbar right off the bat. Most people pick the back mount so that they can develop that ride time, build that up, and then if they need to in the second or third round, if they need to get a submission, they go to that armbar position. But you saw him utilize that for, I believe, the first 2 rounds, and then he tried to go on the back in the third round. And unless you're Amanda Lowen, who we're going to talk about here in a little bit, maybe that's not the best strategy.
So I've done a lot of EBI overtime tournaments. That's what I did for the longest time up until my first IBJJF tournament was actually in 2019, so not very long ago, and a handful, less than 5 points tournaments up to that point. My strategy going into that was always to build up my ride time as long as possible. So the first 2 rounds, if I had those, it's going to be get my ride time up. And then if I need to have that Hail Mary quick submission, I think I would go with the armbar every single time. There's only a handful of times I had a match against a guy, Eric Anderson, down from 10th Planet Phoenix, and I faced him at the bullpen submissions series in Tucson, and we had to go to ride time, and that's what he chose to go to armbar 3 times in a row, and I was able to escape, but I built up my ride time. Not the proudest way to win, obviously, but a win's a win in those situations, especially when you have money on the line.
Absolutely. So those were the first round matchups, and then it was in the second round where we had a little bit of different picks. I picked Pedro and Kyle. You picked Roberto and Kyle. Kyle went through it with another dominating victory in the second round, a pretty quick heel hook if I am
Before
correct.
we get to the second round, let's finish out the first round.
Oh, we're not done with that.
So we had Roberto Jimenez versus Adam Smith. This was actually the longest submission, so the submission that took the longest in the first round and of the entire night. He took 2 minutes and 51 seconds to get a rear naked choke. And then the final first round match was actually going to be Pedro Marino versus Andrew Seidlinger, I guess. Sorry, mispronounced your name. It is what it is. But Pedro heel hooked him in 45 seconds, which leads into our second round, where we did have a difference in selection, where you had Pedro and I had Roberto, but we both had Kyle. Kyle won quickly again with a 43-second heel hook. So I'm not the best at math, but at this point in time, he has a total of 1 minute and 13 seconds of mat time.
It's pretty quick for first 2 rounds in an absolute tournament, especially going into that final nice and fresh.
Correct. And then the match that clashed us against each other was Pedro Marino versus Roberto Jimenez. I was actually surprised at how quickly this happened. I figured that if these two did face each other, it would be a overtime match. And it actually didn't end up that way. It ended up with Pedro securing a heel hook in 1 minute and 42 seconds against Roberto. And it was a good heel hook. It was from, he was doing it off of a leg drag, I believe, and then sat back for a modified 50-50 position and got an inside heel hook.
Yeah, and you actually saw him go for that same position in the finals, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But before we get to the finals, our women's absolute championship match between Amanda Lowen and Raquel Canuto, which the theme of this match was Amanda Lowen holding on. In the regulation period, we saw Raquel Canuto get on the back. We saw her lock in a deep back mount triangle, hunting for the arms. What the hell you got up there? Derrick's got something funny on his screen, and I have no clue what it is. But anyways, the Women's Absolute Championship, Amanda Lowen holds on 3 rounds in a row. She was able to hold on to that armbar position for the entire 2-minute period. It was actually the difference was in the first round, she was able to escape Raquel Canuto's back control with, I believe, 6 seconds left in the 2-minute round. So that was the difference between her winning and losing. We saw her even late in that 3rd round. Raquel was essentially out of the armbar position. She had her armbarring arm free, but it was actually the arm that she had inside protecting her arm from the armbar that Amanda bicep sliced through and just held on to with like a triangle with no head inside.
So she triangled her arm.
She triangled her arms, essentially. It was like a bicep slicer and just held on until the bell. So you could tell she wasn't super happy with the performance, but a win nonetheless, and she retains the title as the Women's Absolute Champion at Submission Underground. And it sounds like there's a handful of big matches coming for her. Chael hinted at Gabby Garcia. She hinted at, I can't remember who else he hinted at.
Gabby never finishes, and she's running from Craig, so that makes sense.
So it would be interesting to see who they bring back for Amanda Lowen next time around. And that leads us into the finals of the Submission Underground Absolute Tournament, which pitted Kyle Bame against Pedro Marinho, and we saw a fairly uneventful regulation period. Kyle didn't do a whole lot. He basically played from his back and tried to make Pedro come at him. Pedro had really the only notable attack of the match with that same inside heel hook entry that we saw him hit in the first round, and it was in the overtime period where Pedro again made the mistake of picking the armbar position. Kyle was able to stack him up and get out of there early in that first round, and then Bame takes the back, and when it looked like Pedro was about to escape, he had that body triangle still locked in and basically just spinal cranked the ever-living shit out of Pedro, and it looked pretty damn painful.
Actually, the official result is a rear naked choke.
Rear naked choke, yeah, whatever you want to call it, but I call that a spinal crank because Pedro was sitting there holding his back, fucking, that shit looked like it hurt.
Should have got some lambskin condoms. But that just goes into the weirdness that goes along with the UBI rounds. And I think that also plays into how you've seen less and less of it being used these days. EBI, don't get me wrong, I love the EBI rules if both people are game to play. And I still prefer it over a lot of things. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy the competition. It's just unfortunate when we have situations, not necessarily with Kyle, don't get me wrong there, but where you have somebody that is dominated the entire regulation and then loses in the overtime simply because they're going with short time, 5 minutes. No real competition or event does 5 minutes for the regulation.
Especially for high-level black belts. That's such a short
match.
IBJJF
adult
it takes 5 minutes to pass the guard sometimes.
Yeah, so that's what's tough, is you kind of feel bad for the ones who, like Canuto, who controlled most of the match. It's unfortunate, but again, she signed up for it, right? So that's how it goes down. That's just how it is. But it will be interesting to see Kyle face Mason and what his game plan is with that, because when you saw him face Kyle, he microdosed, first of all. And then he went out there and just kind of had his little slow playing game. And I wonder if that's what's going to transition or going to be his tactic in this, is if he's going to try and get Mason into those overtime rounds. And while it seems like Kyle is the bigger competitor, and he very well may walk around bigger than Mason, it's interesting to see that Mason won the 99 kilo division on the West Coast Trials in 2019, while Kyle competed at the 88 kilo. So that'll be something to look forward to. I believe it's July 17th.
July 18th.
18th, excuse me.
Sunday, July 18th, it'll be Mason Fowler versus Kyle Bame for the Submission Underground Absolute title. Again, I think it'll be interesting because both guys have really made their mark in that EBI overtime rule set, taking the back in overtime. And Mason's known as a finisher from that position.
Yep.
He's
Ask Craig Jones.
Yeah, right.
Second in
Over the
everything.
face, like, tucking your chin is not a defense to the rear naked choke, especially against somebody with a squeeze like Mason Fowler.
It's still amazing to me that Mason is a brown belt.
I think he may have recently received his black belt. I could be wrong on that, but I want to say that he did receive his black belt after the last submission under.
Okay, so if it's that recent, that would make sense. But even up to that point, him being a brown belt, it was amazing because he won West Coast Trials. He took Craig Jones almost to the distance and at ADCC, and then he beat Craig Jones twice, and then all those other black belts. So
Yeah.
it's
Well, and
kinda
even
crazy.
in that match at ADCC, Craig admitted that there's a sweep that should have counted for Mason,
Yeah.
which would have won him the match. So Mason Fowler is a high-level grappling competitor,
Oh, yeah.
and definitely deserving of the shine that he's been getting over there at Submission Underground the last year or so. I believe 10 or 11-0 as their absolute champion. Excited to see him and Kyle Bame to throw down on July 18th.
Definitely.
That wraps up our coverage of the Submission Underground 24. Again, their next event coming up on July 18th. Looking forward to that. We'll see all of the other matchups that come out. I actually know about a matchup that I can't talk about on here because it hasn't yet been revealed. But Andy Varela's got himself a pretty exciting match against somebody who we talked about tonight, or on the episode today. So that leads into the next event that we're going to be just doing a quick preview on. Again, we don't know a lot about this event or the matchups in it, but there are a lot of names on this event that I recognize, and it's Fury Pro Grappling, which is taking place on UFC Fight Pass tonight. Again, the big name in their main event is Danielle Kelly. We saw her on Who's Number One a couple weeks ago, where she got the fastest submission in Who's Number One history with a really fast knee bar. So excited to see her competing again. We've got John Battle, who's obviously a known name and competitor on the East Coast grappling scene. He's competed at Subspectrum against Keith Krikorian. He's competed a handful of times at Finisher Sub only. So always excited to see John Battle on the mat. A handful of other names that I recognize on there were Fabian Ramirez, Cece Mena, Alex Nemeth, who I saw out at Emerald City Invitational. He didn't win his match out there, but had a really great showing, and I was really impressed with his style, just constant attacking, chain linking attacks and offense one after another. So I'm excited to see him compete in this event. Dylan Masington, D-Boys in there. Nick Salas and Danny Myra, who they also have their own podcast. So if you guys want to check out other jiu-jitsu podcasts, check that one out. I'm not sure of the name on that one. What are you looking at?
Nothing. Continue.
Kevin Dantzler, who's somebody else, another name that I've seen from the Finisher Sub only out there on the East Coast. David Weintraub, I've seen him on Fight to Win a handful of times. John Lyons, I want to say that I also met him while I was at Emerald City Invitational in Philadelphia. So a handful of recognizable names on the East Coast grappling scene in that Fury Pro Grappling event. Check that out tonight on UFC Fight Pass. And that wraps up our preview portion of the show. Next, we're going to be talking about the Summer Showdown coming up on August 14th. This is our Subspectrum event, which is taking place right down the hall from where we're at here inside of Principal Johnson's office at Franklin Junior High. This will be taking place in the Benjamin Theater, a giant 5,000-seat auditorium. It used to be a sanctuary. Somebody asked that we talk about the venue a little bit, and I don't have any actual clips or videos or pictures.
When animals attack, Subspectrum.
You never know what's going to happen at the Franklin Junior High. It's a great venue, but it's unpredictable. Anyways, where were we at?
Clip. Talk about the venue.
Right, so we had some viewers that were interested in hearing about the venue. It's an old sanctuary that is now being turned into a concert venue and an event venue. There's a giant eyefish-shaped stage. There's a huge room underneath that's going to be the green room for all of our advanced weight division competitors as well as the cash prize bracket competitors. There'll be 5 cash prize brackets. We'll be talking about those coming up here shortly and all of the confirmed competitors that are currently in there. But it's a beautiful space, and I'm excited to be able to move into something much larger. We've been working out of the gyms for about the last year or so, and while it was a great place for us to grow, it's time for us to move on to bigger things and better things, and that's what the Benjamin Theater provides us. It provides us a lot more space for competitors, better space for, like I said, for the competitors to warm up and get ready for their matches. It provides us with a stage, which will be awesome to showcase the cash prize brackets and the advanced weight divisions on stage, where we will be doing a full production with a live stream, walkouts, music, lights, camera, action, all the above. So let's get into some of our cash prize brackets that will be taking place on August 14th. The first one is our men's advanced no-gi absolute, and we have a handful of confirmed competitors for that one already. I believe 6 of the 16 spots have been filled at this time. We have the returning no-gi absolute champion and the undisputed #1 pound-for-pound grappler at Subspectrum, Austin Baker, returning to defend both of his titles in the no-gi absolute and the gi absolute. We have Jared Appenzeller, who is a Des Moines Jiu-Jitsu black belt from the area, multiple-time Subspectrum vet. He'll be trying his hand at the no-gi absolute once again. We have Malik Otala, who I am not personally familiar with, but he is a friend and potentially a training partner of Mahmoud Jabbar, who is one of our gi absolute champions.
It makes him our friend as well.
Absolutely. Malik, you're our friend. All right, so he'll be in our advanced no-gi absolute. I believe he's a pretty big guy.
Thick boy?
Thick boy, from what I saw, from the pictures that I saw. He looks like a pretty big guy, so maybe he'll be giving Austin Baker a run for his money. Maybe $100 from you if he can figure out a way to submit him.
I did notify Austin of that. I do have replies from Austin about it.
Yeah?
So
Maybe we'll have to pull those up at some point before the next event. We got a handful of shows we'll be doing before then. We have Jesse Hannum, who will be joining us from Guardians Jiu-Jitsu and Judo down in Ottumwa, Iowa. So another Iowan jumping into the advanced no-gi absolute. I love when Iowans join our cash prize features and throw down. We also have Andrew Rogers, another Iowan from Citadel BJJ and a multiple-time veteran of both our advanced gi and no-gi absolutes, training out there under Matt Layton and Jim Kelly at Citadel BJJ. And the biggest one, and maybe the biggest threat, or maybe the potential to create another viral D1 wrestler versus BJJ black belt video, is Pat Downey. I believe he's training out of American Top Team at this time, but
No, I believe he's with Wagner and Cyborg, actually.
oh, so see, I don't even know what I'm talking about here. Don't listen to me, guys. But anyways, Pat Downey, USA Wrestling, what do I want to say, world team member. He is a former Iowa State Cyclone, so many people in the area are familiar with him, and we're excited to see him taking part in our advanced no-gi absolute. It was actually Kendall Rusing, who will also be taking place in our women's no-gi absolute, who talked to him. He's going to be facing Kyvan Gadsden, another Iowa State wrestler, in a wrestling match the night before the event. And then the next morning, he's going to be competing in our advanced no-gi absolute. So props to Pat Downey for jumping in there despite being a white belt in jiu-jitsu. And like I said, that leads us into our women's advanced no-gi absolute. Confirmed athletes for that include Kendall Rusing out of Gracie Baja in Southern California. Her sister, who is, I believe, now either a blue, maybe a purple belt, she will also be competing in the advanced no-gi absolute. And they made sure to inform me that if they make it to the finals against each other, they will do a real match. They will not just close out. They won't do a fake match. They will actually try to rip each other's heads off. So if that actually happens, I'm excited to see that. We have Aislinn O'Connell, which is out of Kindred Jiu-Jitsu, training partner of Austin Daffron, Duck Jitsu, who's our men's flyweight champion and who will also be taking place in our men's flyweight feature, which we'll be talking about here in a second. We have Jen Case, another black belt female out of here in the Midwest, and then Christina Hansen, the wife of John Hansen, who we talked about earlier. Her husband is a multiple-time veteran of our advanced gi and no-gi absolutes, I believe, at the Adventureland event. He took both of those titles and the $400 cash in each. So his wife, who I believe is a purple belt, will be taking place in that no-gi absolute. And that is the confirmed competitor list for our women's advanced no-gi absolute, which leads into our men's flyweight tournament, which will be taking place at the same event. We have Austin Duck Jitsu Daffron, the returning flyweight champion, coming back to defend his title in an 8-man bracket for $1,000 cash. We also have Hunter Claggett, who is out of the Pacific Northwest, out of, I believe, Bellingham MMA in Washington. We have Jonah Nassif, an Iowa native, coming from Hard Drive Performance Center in Cedar Rapids, another Iowan that I'm excited to see get in there. He had a match at BJJ Woodstock, a very nice showing, so excited to see him get in there with the 125ers. He's been begging me for a long time for a 125 division. He's a little bit undersized for the 135ers, so excited to see him get a chance against some of these flyweights. We have Eric Ford, who's another Subspectrum veteran. He took place in our men's 135-pound bracket back at Subspectrum 7 that saw Ginny Ocasio win the 135-pound title. And then we also have top 10 ranked black belt and Flow Grappling's rankings, Marcelo Cohen, taking place. And I'm excited. I would say right now him and Duck Jitsu are the favorites for sure.
Do you know if they've faced each other before?
They have faced each other. We talked about it briefly on the podcast last week, but they faced each other at an Ultimate Mat Warriors, where Duck Jitsu took the win in overtime. And again, I think Marcelo is going to be much harder to deal with in this 80cc style rule set where points are involved. He's got a really, really hard guard to pass. He's got a really, really good base when he's on top. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of strategy Austin implements to try to get a victory against Marcelo Cohen in a different rule set. So that's the confirmed competitors for our men's flyweight tournament. There are 3 spots remaining. There's some uncompleted, incomplete registrations, but they are not secured or in those spots until they pay. So if you want to get in on this, jump on the Subspectrum website and get yourself registered for the men's flyweight tournament, 125 pounds. I'm surprised we haven't heard from Nate Williams.
I was just going to say, is he going to be doing it? And it's funny when we come to these tournaments, and this is not against Nate, because I assume Nate is either busy, can't do it, has a fight, or something that's preventing him. But we have a lot of these Des Moines schools or Des Moines area schools that have people that talk a very big game, but when it comes to registering for tournaments or competing at higher levels, they much rather go to a tournament where nobody is showing up to instead of a tournament where there is a large registration. So it's really funny to me when things like that happen. That, again, is not against Nate. Nate, I know, is very game. I've rolled with Nate. He's a great guy. We'd love to have him on the show there. But in reference to the registrations and people competing, I would like to see more Des Moines representation.
And I absolutely would too, especially in the cash prize features. You know, I think it would be great to be able to crown an Iowa champion, right? A native Iowan who wins the title over. You did a damn good job, right? And John Gutta too, right? He made it to the finals of the Advanced No-Gi Absolute. So it's not that nobody's trying, but I would love to crown an Iowan champion. I would be lying to you if I said that I wasn't looking forward to doing something like that in the future. So that leads into our men's gi absolute, which 3 of the 8 spots are currently absorbed. The first of being by, of course, our returning gi absolute champion, Austin Baker. Again, the #1 pound-for-pound grappler at Subspectrum. He'll be returning to defend his title against, so far, Andrew Rogers out of Citadel BJJ. We also talked about him taking place in the no-gi absolute, and Mahmoud Jabbar, who is returning as the February absolute gi champion. He was taking part in Ramadan during our last event, so he just worked the event and was not able to compete, because he actually mentioned that the last 2 times he competed during Ramadan, he blew out his ACL once and he broke his forearm the other time. So I was like, yeah, I totally understand you not wanting to compete this time around. So it'd be good to see Mahmoud Jabbar get back out there and compete in the men's gi absolute. And then we also have the women's advanced gi absolute, which right now only 2 of the 8 spots are currently absorbed, and that is Jennifer Case, who we also talked about, black belt here from the Midwest, in the first spot, and then Kendall Bruising, the top 10 ranked black belt, female black belt from Gracie Baja Corona out in Southern California. She's taking part in both those cash prize features. In addition to those $1,500 in cash prizes, we also have Wild Heart Nutrition, who will be sponsoring the fastest female submission of the day. So shout out to Wild Heart Nutrition for throwing another $250 to the women grapplers at our event on August 14th. So any of those spots that are still available, you do not need to apply to be in this event. There's no application process required. All you have to do is go to subspectrumbjj.com, head over to the Smooth Comp page, and pay the registration fee to register. Black belts register for free, so if you are a black belt and you're looking to compete in any of our cash prize features, contact me directly, and I will get you a coupon code to register for free.
And don't forget that I put a $100 bounty or prize or whatever you'd like to label it, 500 or not 500, $100 to anybody that can submit Austin Baker. That's not B, it's submit, gi or no gi.
All right, and that pretty much wraps up everything that we've got for the podcast today. So a little rough going there. We had a handful of cuts in there. We had a dog attack the window. I'm not really sure what. I'm still not sure. I think there's a beast out there.
Well, when you're in Iowa, and Principal Johnson had to use his office. It's a chaotic day overall. You got to do what you can do with what you got. Now, before we take off, I do have a piece of advice. With it being the 4th of July, we're in prime summertime. Remember rule number 1, no salmon shorts worn by men.
And that's our closing remarks, ladies and gentlemen. This is episode 2 of the Subspectrum BJJ podcast. My name is Jordan Jitsu.
I'm Derrick Flaig.
And we're out.